Your modded GameCube can play classic favorites like the NES, Super NES, or even the N64. It can play Sega favorites like the SG-1000, the Master System, and even the Sega Genesis. It can even play consoles like the Colecovision and the TurboGrafx-16. It can play Nintendo handhelds on the big screen like the Game Boy, Game Boy Color, and the Game Boy Advance. It can even play Sega's GameGear as an added bonus. And look at this, it plays CD-based systems like the Sega CD, the PlayStation, and even the elusive Neo Geo CD. And for the icing on the cake, play your favorite DOS games on your GameCube. Come on, I'll show you how it's done. Everything you'll need to download is already pre-set up for you on the mega.nz website. I have it linked for you in the description. Come down to the green download box and click on it. If you're prompted by your browser, click allow. This puts the file in the mega download queue and will download it to your computer. Once you have the file downloaded, you'll need to extract it. This is normally something I gloss over as it's really simple to do, but you can save yourself some unnecessary folder structure by doing this one extra step. Before you start extracting the file, just go into the location that you're going to extract to and delete the extra GC Emulators folder listed here. Then come down to the extract button and click on it to extract the file. It will only extract a single folder's worth of content directly to the downloads folder. Once that folder is extracted, delete the zip file out of your downloads folder to eliminate clutter. Double-click into the GC Emulators folder. You'll find a series of folders and files in here we'll talk about in just a moment. You'll need to insert an SD card formatted in FAT32 into your system. Now grab everything that came inside that GC Emulators folder and drag and drop it directly onto the root of the SD card that you formatted in FAT32. Okay, now that you have all of this stuff copied over, let's talk about what you just put on the SD card and what to do with it. Everything you need to play all of the game systems previously shown in this video is already set up on the card. The only thing you'll need to do is learn where to put your game content on the card for it to work. To that end, we'll take a look at first, where to put the content on the SD card so you can play it. Second, we'll take a look at what format your content needs to be in order for it to work correctly with the emulators. And finally, we'll fire up the emulators to show you how to launch the content you want to play. First up, ScummVM for playing classic DOS games on your GameCube. This is the one and only emulator in this package that doesn't load directly from the root of the SD card. To load ScummVM, locate the folder called Apps, then double-click into the Apps folder. You'll find a folder here called ScummVM. Double-click into it. Inside the ScummVM folder, you'll find a folder called Games. Double-click into that folder. Your DOS games should be kept in subfolders inside the Games folder. Take a look inside this folder for Day of the Tentacle. You'll find several different file types in here, but you want to make sure that the files at least have one DOS executable file for them to work correctly. Insert the SD card from your computer into a memory card to SD card adapter for your GameCube. I have these linked for you in the description. Fire up your GameCube and then launch Swiss using the method of your choice. On the SD card menu, use the D-pad to move the highlight down to Apps and select it with the A button. Move the highlight down to ScummVM and select it with the A button. There's one single Dolphin file, or .dol file, listed within this subfolder. Use the D-pad to move the highlight to the ScummVM.dol file and select it with the A button to launch the emulator. From the emulator's main menu interface, scroll over with the arrow to add game and select it with the A button. You'll see a listing for any content you've placed in the Games folder. In this case, there's a demo here for Day of the Tentacle. Just select that folder one time with the A button. No need to double click in. Come down to Choose in the bottom right corner and select it with the A button. It may look like the software is locked up at this point, but it actually takes about 20 seconds in real time for the game to load. The emulator will verify the content that you've selected. Once you've confirmed that it's the game that you want, just navigate to OK in the bottom right corner and click on it with the A button. To fire up the game of your choice, navigate with the arrow to Load and select Load with the A button. And in no time at all, you'll be ready to
take on the world.
Alright, now that Purple Tentacle has started his quest for world domination, let's take a look at how to run N64 games on your GameCube. Locate the folder called Wii64 on the root of your SD card and double-click into it. You'll find a subfolder here called ROMs. Double-click into that folder. The ROM files need to be in .N64 format for them to work correctly. The emulator cannot work with zip files in this instance. For this illustration, I actually have the ROM in its own subfolder here. in N64 format, but I don't think you have to do this. You can just put the N64 files right in the ROMs folder. Back at your GameCube, launch Swiss. At the root level of the SD card, use the D-pad to scroll down until you see the listing for Cube64 in .dol format. Select it with the A button to launch the emulator. From the list of menu choices shown on screen, navigate to New ROM with the D-pad and select it with the A button. You'll see the listing for any games you copied over to the ROMs folder from your computer, in this case, Super Mario World. Select it with the A button to load the game into memory. It takes a few moments for the game to be loaded into ARAM, but once this process is complete, you'll get a confirmation message on screen. At the confirmation prompt, select OK with the A button to continue.
It's me, Mario!
Game on, plumber. Game on. Ready to play some PlayStation 1 games on your GameCube? It was featured in the video thumbnail after all. Here's how it's done. Double-click on the folder called WSX. Inside this folder, you'll find a folder called ISOs. Double-click on the ISOs folder. Your game files need to be stored in this folder in subfolders. For example, here's Castlevania Symphony of the Night. Inside that subfolder, you'll find the files that you need in order to run the games correctly in the emulator. In this case, the game is saved in bin.q format. From the main menu of Swiss, use the D-pad to navigate down through the list of folders and files on your SD card. The file for the emulator starts with CubeSX and has a .dol extension to it. Select it with the A button to launch the emulator. The BIOS that you need for the emulator should be pre-configured and ready to go, but if you run into any troubles, let me show you where to set that up. To choose the BIOS you need, use the D-pad to scroll down to Settings and select it with the A button. Inside the Settings menu, you'll see a listing called Select BIOS. Use the D-pad to scroll down with the highlight and select SD with the A button. To lock in this setting, use the D-pad to scroll down to Save Settings.cfg and select the SD option with the A button. Then select OK with the A button to continue. Now that the BIOS is locked in, press the B button to go back to the main menu. Now you can load up the game that you want to play. From the list of menu choices, select Load ISO with the A button. The game selection screen can be kind of low contrast, so I'm going to zoom in a little bit and also move the highlight out the way so that you can see. Okay, now you can see Castlevania Symphony of the Night is listed here. Scroll down with the highlight and select the game that you want with the A button. To launch your game of choice, just select the first .bin extension file in the game's folder. You'll get a confirmation message that the game has been found and loaded from the SD card. Select OK with the A button to continue. To launch the game, use the D-pad to move the highlight down to Play Game and select Play Game with the A button. This loads a PlayStation boot screen and allows you to start up your virtual disk. What you'll find with PlayStation emulation on the GameCube is the quality of the emulation experience largely depends on the game you select. Some games are simply easier to emulate than others. As you can see here, Castlevania Symphony of the Night runs slower than it would run on an actual PlayStation. If you go down the PlayStation 1 emulation route with GameCube, post in the comments which titles you tested and how they worked out so that everyone can enjoy the benefit of this information. If you'd like to play some Game Boy Advance games on your GameCube without that expensive adapter, here's how you do it. There's a folder located on the SD card called mGBA. Double-click into that folder. Inside that folder, there's a folder called ROMs. Locate that folder and double-click into it. This folder is where you need to place your Game Boy Advance ROMs. You can put them in zip format and the emulator will unzip them for you when you play the game. Make note that there's a save file already in this folder from where I tested this emulator on the GameCube prior to making the video. With the SD card back in your GameCube, run Swiss. Use the D-pad to move the highlight down through the list of choices until you find the one called mGBA.dol. Select that file with the A button to launch the emulator. From the emulator's text-based menu, navigate to the game of your choice, in this case Super Mario Advance 2. Then select it with the A button, and your game will start right up. It's too bad the GameCube didn't come with the ability to play NES games built into it natively. Well, now it has it. Here's how it's done. Locate the FCEMU folder and double-click on it. There's a ROM subfolder inside that folder. Locate it and double-click on the ROMs folder. That's the folder where you need to place your NES content. No need to uncompress the ROM files, you can throw them right into this folder in zip format. With the SD card inserted into your GameCube, navigate with the D-pad to move the highlight to the FCEMU file with a .dol extension. Press the A button to launch the emulator from here. Once the emulator has loaded and reached the main menu, you'll see the listing of any NES games that you've copied over into the ROMs folder on the SD card. Move the highlight over to select the game of your choice and launch it with the A button. Now you're on the fast track to the Mushroom Kingdom. Do you fancy playing some Sega games on your Nintendo GameCube? That's a can do. Locate the GenPlus folder on the SD card and double-click into it. Just like with the other cartridge-based emulation setups, navigate to the ROMs folder and double-click on it. Since this one emulator represents 5 different consoles, I've got the ROM split up into 5 different subfolders inside the ROMs folder. First on the list is GameGear. When you double-click into that folder, you can place your GameGear content in there in zip format and the emulator will be able to uncompress it for you. Put the SD card back in your GameCube and launch Swiss. From the list of choices, use the D-pad to scroll down to GenPlus.dol. Then select it with the A button to launch the emulator. Each time you run the emulator, you'll see a couple of messages. The first one is that settings have been restored. Press A. The second one's a notice from the author. Consider reading it the first time, and then press A to continue. From the list of menu choices that appear, use the D-pad to navigate the highlight over to Load Game and select it with the A button. You can now select any of the systems that you like by moving the highlighter with the D-pad and selecting them with the A button. This is going to pull up the list of subfolders that has all of the content that you've copied over. Since we're currently focused on GameGear, navigate the highlight to the GameGear folder and select it with the A button. From here, you can launch the game of your choice with the A button. And just like that, your handheld game is now tethered to the TV. When we last left off on the PC, we had looked at GameGear content. Let's look at Genesis now. Double-click into the Genesis folder on the SD card. In here, you'll find that Genesis content can be left zipped up, and the emulator will uncompress them for you. Just like with GameGear, insert the SD card in the GameCube, launch Swiss, and scroll down to the listing for GenPlus.dol. Select it with the A button to launch it. As with each time the emulator is launched, press the A button once, and press it again to go to the main menu. Now that you're at the main menu, press the D-pad to the left and select Load Game with the A button. You can pick any of the consoles listed and press the A button. From here, you'll see that list of folders again. Use the D-pad to scroll down to Sega Genesis and select it with the A button. Here you'll find your Genesis content. Select the game you want with the A button. And now, it's time to get your funk on. Sega Master System more to your liking? I've got you covered. Inside that GenPlus folder and ROM subfolder, double-click the Master System folder. Put your Master System ROMs in here in either compressed or uncompressed format. The emulator can handle both. Just like with the other Sega-based games, insert the SD card into your GameCube. Launch Swiss, then scroll down to GenPlus, and launch the .dol file with the A button. At the first splash screen, press the A button, and at the second one, press A again. From the main menu, press the D-pad to the left and select Load Game with A. Then scroll to one of the consoles and press A again. From the list of available folders, use the D-pad to scroll down to Master System and select it with the A button. Select the content you want to launch, in this case, Afterburner, by selecting it with the A button. Now it's time to put your flight skills to the ultimate test. This package has also got you covered for Sega CD content. Inside the GenPlus folder in the ROMs subfolder, navigate to Sega CD. Make a folder for any of the games you want to play. Inside those game folders, you'll need to copy your games over in bin.q format, just like you see here. If you've been following along with the other Sega guides, you know exactly what to do here. Put the SD card in your GameCube, launch Swiss, use the D-pad to navigate down to GenPlus.dol, launch it with the A button. Press A at the first splash screen and A again at the second one. From the menu, scroll to the left and select Load Game with A. Select a console with the A button, then scroll down to Sega CD in the list of folders. Select it with the A button, and you'll be presented with the list of folders that have your game content. Select the folder for the game you want to play with the A button. In here, select the first binary or .bin file with the A button. You'll see the Sega CD BIOS loading screen, and then you'll be piloting one of the most advanced starships and one of the most visually stunning games on the entire Sega CD platform. But what about that other Sega console? The one that doesn't get a whole lot of love, but is still a great system. To get the SG-1000 games you want running on your system, double-click its folder. Inside the folder, you can copy over any ROMs for the SG-1000 that you'd like in either zipped or uncompressed format. The emulator can take on both. Back at the GameCube, you guessed it. Insert the SD card, launch Swiss, use the D-pad to scroll down to GenPlus.dol, and select it with the A button to launch it. At the first splash screen, press the A button. At the second splash screen, press the A button. From the main menu, press to the left and select Load Game with the A button. Choose one of the consoles and select it with the A button. Inside here, you'll see the list of folders again. Scroll down to SG-1000 using the D-pad and select it with the A button. You'll find your SG-1000 ROMs here. Use the D-pad to navigate to the game you want to launch and select it with A. Super Monaco on the SG-1000 is kind of like the Millennium Falcon. She may not look like much, but she's got it where it counts. And it's a tough game too. Give it a try, you'll see. TurboGrafx 16 games are played on the GameCube through the use of the Hugo emulator. To put your games in, go into the Hugo folder on the SD card. Inside that folder, you'll find a ROMs folder. Double-click on the ROMs folder and place your games in here. They can be placed in either compressed zip format or uncompressed format. The emulator can take on both. Insert the SD card into your GameCube, power on your GameCube, and launch Swiss. Use the D-pad to scroll down through the list of emulators at the root of the SD card until you find the Hugo.dol file. Select that with the A button to launch the emulator. From the main menu of the emulator, use the D-pad to scroll down to Load New Game and select it with the A button. Since your games are saved on your SD card, pick Load from SD with the A button. From here, you'll see the list of all of the games you've copied over to the ROMs folder on your SD card. Select your game with the A button. Time to go for the triple ship and max out your score. And I sure do love that triple ship. When I was doing the research for this video, it came as quite a surprise to me that the GameCube could play Neo Geo CD games. Here's how it's done. Locate the NeoCD folder on the root of the SD card, then double-click into that folder. You'll find a subfolder here called ROMs. Locate it and double-click into the ROMs folder. You'll need a folder for each one of the Neo Geo CD games you intend to play with this emulator. Compared to the other disc-based emulators that used BenQ format, Neo Geo games have their own unique format that you need to follow for them to work in the emulator. Every file must be uncompressed. The emulator cannot use zip or ISO types of files. What you see here are the uncompressed files from an ISO-based game. It also needs to have specific MP3 files for each of the audio tracks that would have been on the original disc. In this case, there's a subfolder here called MP3. All you have to do is make sure you have those files in MP3 format and just copy them right into the MP3 folder inside your Neo Geo CDs game folder. And one more important step, each of those MP3 files needs to be named track and a 2-digit number to represent its track number, like track02.mp3, track03.mp3, and so on, all the way to the last numbered track available to the game. Remember that there's an example of this already pre-saved on the SD card to show you the proper formatting for Neo Geo CD games. With the SD card in the GameCube, power on the system and launch Swiss. Scroll down with the D-pad until you find the listing for NeoCD in .dol format. Press the A button to launch the emulator. When the main menu for the emulator appears, use the D-pad to move the highlight down to Load New Game. Select it with the A button to continue. In the submenu, select Load from SD with the A button. You'll see the list of games here. Launch the game of your choice by pressing the A button. You'll see the Neo Geo BIOS animation screen appear, and the game of your choice will be ready to play in just a matter of moments. Nice! We're taking it way back this time, all the way into the early 1980s with some Colecovision. It may not make sense at first to use a Sega-based emulator to play Colecovision games. It's all about to come together though. Go into the SMSPlus folder. From here, you'll see a folder listing for ROMs. Navigate to that folder and double-click on it. This is where your ColecoVision ROMs need to be on the SD card. In my testing, I found that these work properly if you have them uncompressed in .col format. It makes sense since the BIOS for the ColecoVision has to be uncompressed and in .col format also. Just like with the emulators before it, put the SD card into your GameCube, power on your GameCube, and launch Swiss. Use the D-pad to scroll down through the listings until you see SMSPlus in .dol format. Press the A button on it to launch the emulator. This title screen probably looks familiar. Just press the A button to bypass it and go directly to the SMSPlus main menu. You see, SMSPlus has been replaced by GenPlus GX, but this is still a fantastic emulator for ColecoVision. To play the game of your choice, use the D-pad to move the highlight down to Load New Game and press the A button. Scroll down to Load from SD and select it with A. You'll see the list of any games that you have available to you here. Use the D-pad to move the highlight to the game of your choice and select it with the A button to launch it. Even though you don't have access to a keypad, you can press the right shoulder button on your GameCube controller to dial up the number or character that you want. Once you've selected the one that you want, in this case I'm just going to pick number 1 for difficulty level 1, press the left shoulder button to activate that number pad choice. And there's a strange irony to playing a Nintendo game licensed to Coleco through a Colecovision emulator on a Nintendo system. Wow! Ready to play some Super Nintendo Super Effects chip content on your GameCube? Here's how it's done. Locate the SNES 9𝐘𝐿𝐒 folder and double click into it. You've made it this far in the video, so I'm sure you're unsurprised to find there's a ROMs folder here. Double click in and you can place your SNES content here in either compressed or uncompressed format, whichever you please. Just like with the other emulators, insert the SD card into your GameCube, power it on, and launch SWIS. This time use the D-pad to scroll almost all the way to the bottom until you see the listing for SNES 9𝐘𝐿𝐒 in .dol format. Press the A button to launch the emulator. Once the main menu of the emulator appears, you'll see the list of your Super Nintendo content that you've loaded on the SD card. Simply pick the game you want by using the D-pad to move the highlight to it and pressing the A button. And considering there's no Super FX chip built into the GameCube, this emulation is really good. The Nintendo Game Boy and Game Boy Advance literally come in a package deal of 2 for 1 for GameCube emulators. On the root of the SD card, navigate to the folder called VBA-GX, Visual Boy Advance GX. Double-click into this folder. Inside the VBA-GX folder, look for a subfolder titled ROMs. Double-click into this folder. You'll find 2 folders here, one labeled GB for Game Boy games and one labeled GBC for Game Boy Color. To play your Game Boy games, double-click into the GB folder and put your game files in here in either compressed or uncompressed format. With the SD card inserted into your GameCube, power it on and launch SWIS. This time, scroll all the way down to the very bottom of the folders and files list. Find the listing for VBA-GX in .dol format and select it with A. From here, you'll have access to both Game Boy and Game Boy Color content. To launch your Game Boy games, use the D-pad to move the highlight to GB and select it with the A button. You'll find the list of Game Boy ROMs you've installed there. Use the D-pad to move the highlight to the game of your choice and select it with A to launch it. Now you can check out my wife's favorite Game Boy game, Barbie Game Girl. Just kidding, it's Amazing Penguin, but she's sitting right here in the room with me while I record this voiceover, so I had to mess with her. To play your Game Boy Color games, navigate back to the ROMs folder. Double-click into the GBC folder. This is where you'll need to put your Game Boy Color content in either compressed zip or uncompressed format. The emulator can do both. Just like with Game Boy games, put the SD card back in the GameCube, power it on, and launch SWIS. Just like with Game Boy, navigate down to the bottom of the list to VBA-GX. Select it with the X button to launch the .dol file. This time, from the list of folder choices, use the D-pad to scroll down to GBC and select it with the A button. To launch the game of your choice, use the D-pad to move the highlight down to it and select it with the A button to start the game. Although I have to admit here, the game's called Kirby Tilt and Tumble, but I tried to tilt the GameCube a number of times and it never seemed to tumble. Go figure. If all of this sounds great to you, but you don't have a plan yet for launching SWIS on your GameCube, I've got the answer for you, and it's featured right here in this video, shown on screen and linked in the pinned comment and description. Look forward to seeing you there.